Okay, everyone, this is a TPFASTT for the poem Harlem, and we did this in class, but I wanted to make sure that you had a video that you could return to. So, first thing we want to do in a TPFASTT is take a look at the poem's title, which we know is Harlem. And what do we know about Harlem? We want to write that down, make some predictions as to what the poem could be about. So we know that Harlem is in New York. And we wrote this down on our poem earlier. So that's the T for TPFASTT. The next thing we want to do is actually paraphrase. Before we do that, I think it's important to do a couple of things. So first, I would want to go through and number the lines on my poem, or in my poem rather. So I'm going to do that quickly, and this just helps so that a person can refer to a specific line versus having to read the line over and over again. Either one would work, but we like to do this anyway. So we number the poems, then we read the poem. I like to identify any words that I don't know and write those definitions down, and then just anything else that I notice. So, Harlem. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat? Or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load. Or does it explode? So the poem, I know, is about dreams deferred. We know this. The first question, the first line, is asking the question, what happens to a dream deferred? So I'm just going to mark that this is the big question. And then one thing I notice is that every other line in the poem is basically another question, but the questions are almost answers themselves to the big question. So each of these two lines, with the exception of line 6, basically line 6 and 11 are almost questions themselves, which give an answer. So does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? We talked in class, what happens to something in the sun if it's left there for a long time without care? It becomes like a raisin. It looks like a raisin. It's shriveled. Okay, and I know that this is the comparison because they use a simile here. So that's our figurative language. So I'm just going to go and underline all of the sort of key words here for figurative language. When we look at figurative language, we're looking for similes, metaphors, personification, onomatopoeia, words like things like that. All right, so the first line, what happens to a dream deferred? We looked this word up and we said that this word is, it means to postpone or to put something off. Oops. Okay. So the question then is, okay, so does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? What is the it referring to? The it is referring to the dream. So I just want to make a note of that. Okay, so does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Does it become shriveled? Or fester like a sore and then run? Fester was another word that we looked up. And that word means to become infected. Okay, so does it become infected? Does it stink like rotten meat? So we know that, okay, so my first impression is, ew, that sounds gross, and I imagine this like horrific smell. But if something is rotten, that means that it's been forgotten, right? It's been left, abandoned. Okay, so something that's been forgotten, left on accident or on purpose. Or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet. So again, we kind of likened this one to if you have a wound and your wound starts to heal, you get that kind of scab. Okay, so this means that it's like maybe started to heal, but then maybe something has happened. It's not completely healed yet. So I'm just going to make a note that it's maybe starts to heal. Maybe it just sags like a heavy load. So a heavy load, it's just sitting there. It's baggage. Or does it explode? So again, the it is the dream. Okay, and when we talk about exploding, exploding can have a negative but also a positive connotation. Spell that wrong. Okay, so again, it doesn't have to be negative, but it can also be positive. We just tend to see it. If something is exploding, it's going in different directions, right? Usually in an uncontrolled sort of, I think of it as an uncontrolled way, but I suppose there's a way to make it controlled as well. So I'm just going to make a note here that it's going in many different directions. Okay, so the other thing I noticed right away is that this line, just compared to all of the other lines, is italicized. And I want to know, like, why is this italicized? Okay, that was done on purpose. Obviously, it's you know, it's supposed to stand out just visually on the page. Okay, so we've gone through, we've talked about the title, we've looked at the figurative language. We want to look at the attitude. So it kind of, if you read through, the attitude of the speaker is definitely questioning. You might even say like curious. Oops. So there is that. I mean, certainly we have repeated questions here, or the person is repeating themselves, asking questions over and over again. So, but yet it seems to there seems to be a shift, an attitude shift or change in this last line, 9-11. Or does it explode? And this seems maybe even hopeful. I'm just going to put a question mark there because, you know, it's kind of almost, I just can picture someone maybe even just like leaning in, maybe saying this quieter, whispering it, you know, kind of this daring to dream sort of thing. So if I was to go through and paraphrase this, I would be putting it in my own words. So I would say, like, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it shrivel up? Does it become infected? Is it just simply forgotten? Does a dream postponed heal? Or maybe it just becomes baggage a person carries around with them. Or can it can it change? Can it become something bigger? So looking at that, if I go back to the title Harlem, I know that Harlem, like that's in New York, and personally, I think that this poem is about the Harlem Renaissance. It's about what has happened for people living in this neighborhood, this community, and this incredible growth that comes from the community, and from like, hey, you know what, this isn't maybe accepted in quote unquote the mainstream. We're creating it for ourselves. So I'm just gonna write down like Harlem Renaissance here. And so much like music, art, writing, poetry, etc. Came out of the Harlem Renaissance. And so again, this was like really changing and altering things for people, and creating this sort of creative community where people were allowed to express their ideas and tell their stories. So you know, that's how I look at this poem. The only part I didn't really write down was my interpretation of the poem, which I just like verbally gave you, but that was really my paraphrase, that's what this poem is about. And so we see this in our characters in A Raisin in the Sun, and certainly through, if you watched the documentary Eyes on the Prize, and you did some of the web quests, certainly you would have seen this come out. So TPFASTT is taking a look at multiple things, and the first is looking at the title. You want to paraphrase. You look at the figurative language. You look at the attitude of the speaker. Look at if there's any shifts. Then you look at the title again, and then last you look at the theme. So, you know, what is this poem saying about whatever the topic is? So, what is this poem saying about dreams? And once you have your answer to that, that is your theme, okay? So Langston Hughes is talking about, hey, you know, we have a variety of choices on how we choose to respond to a dream postponed, and that gives us the power, kind of puts it in our hands. We get to decide how we're going to react to things that happen to us. That's it. That's how you do a TPFASTT. If you have questions, please let me know. Good luck.